Good morning, student. Today we are going to discuss about interview skills. As a professional student, you should know why interview skills are important for you. Most of the organization and or any organization conduct these interviews for hiring process. You should know why interviews is important for any professional. Let's begin. We will discuss everything about interview skill or interviews. First, what is interview? Interview is a one kind of process. If any organization wants to hire candidates for that organization, so at that time they conduct interviews. There are lots of different kinds of interviews they can conduct. We will discuss that points in next slide. First, why interview is important. See, importance of interview from recruitment. As we know that interview is play an essential part of a recruitment process. Through that interview they come to know whether that candidate is suitable for that organization or not. So then how to prepare for interview means your grooming, your attiring, or your overall presentation is important for interview. We will discuss that things. Then what matters in interview? In interview, your interaction, oral interaction with interviewer is important. In that round, you have to show your presentation skill, your communication skill, your interpersonal skill, everything. We will discuss that point. Then knowledge. You should know, or you must have, you must possess vast subject knowledge about your domain. Then and then you will crack that interview round. So try to collect more and more knowledge instead of only degrees or only marks. Try to collect skills. So that point will help you in your interview round. They may ask more and more questions about your domain knowledge. Then grooming, how you appear for that interview, it's important. Your grooming means your professional identity you have to show during interviews. Then soft skills, there are various kinds of soft skills we have. So we have to show, we have to demonstrate our soft skills during this interview process, like presentation skill, communication skill, problem solving skill, analytical thinking, critical thinking, or team management, time management skill. These are the some kinds of soft skills you have to show that soft skills also. Then body language, that non-verbal communication skill. Body language means non-verbal communication skill. Non-verbal communication skill plays an important role in each and any kind of presentation. So body language plays an important role. So try to focus on your body language. So types of interviews, we will discuss now types of interviews. First, screening interviews. Screening interviews means what? If you see the current scenario of this pandemic, then we know that most of the peoples lost their jobs. Then if you see the unemployment rate in India, so day by day it increasing. So a screening test is one kind of interview test. So they select particular candidates for next round, they select particular candidates for or they shortlisted candidates through screening test. Then telephone screening interview. Nowadays, due to pandemic, most of the organizations conduct telephonic screening interviews for recruitment process. It's too difficult to conduct face-to-face interviews in this pandemic situation. So telephone screening interviews nowadays mostly used. Then unstructured interviews. Suppose any news channel wants to take any surveys. At that time, they conduct unstructured interviews. They communicate with different kinds of people without any preparation. They ask some questions about that survey. This is unstructured interview. Then panel interviews, this is recruitment. This panel interview process used in recruitment process mostly. Then sequential interviews. Sequential interviews also one kind of interview. For example, if you crack aptitude round, then they call for screening interviews, then they call for actual or technical interviews. Like that, sequential interviews also conduct. Then desktop video conferencing. Here, if you want to get high job in multinational companies, and that multinational company's headquarter is from is out of India. Then at that time they conduct desktop video conferencing interviews. That company's higher authorities communicate with you through video conferencing. So these kind of interviews also nowadays used. Individual interview here, individual interview, for example, most of the celebrities delivered, or most of the celebrities gave their interviews. That means individual interviews. Then situational or organizational interviews. Here situational and organizational interviews also one type of interview. So now we will discuss about skills are to be conveyed during the interview. Your organizational skill, how you organize your idea, how you deliver answers about whatever questions asked from panels. So that skill is important. Organizational skill plays an important role in interview process. How you demonstrate your overall subject knowledge, how you demonstrate your skills in front of interviewers. So that thing is important. Then critical thinking skill. Sometimes interviews, during interviews ask questions related to critical thinking. So how you think on about that question, so that thing is also important. Then communication skill, no doubt for each and every interview process communication skill is important. So try to give actual or proper answer whatever interviews ask to you. So then interpersonal skill, this is also important skill. Interpersonal skill means communication with other people's, interpersonal. That skill is also important. You have to communicate with interviewees in a formal way. You have to show your non-verbal skills like maintaining eye contact, then nodding heads, then proper posture or proper gesture you have to use during interviews. Then multitasking skills. Sometimes interviewees ask questions like, can you play a role of multitasker? Then you have to show that qualities, multitasking skills in yourself. Means different tasks they will assign you at a time. So you have to handle all that task properly. That means multitasking skill is also important. Then organizational skill, dress professionally and neatly for an interview. This is also one kind of grooming or attiring. Dress professionally and neatly for an interview. You should have wear proper professional dress, tie, coat, then proper shoes. Then keep supplies or materials, for example pen, paper, resume and business cards on hand if you think they might be relevant to the interview. Take one extra copy of your resume or pen and paper with you. If you have your own business card, then bring that business card during interview session, so that things will help you. Then organize your thoughts before the interview. Preparation for typical interview questions will reflect a sense of general readiness. So practice makes man perfect, as we know that. And organize your thoughts before the interview. Try to prepare uh, typical interview questions answers will reflect a sense of general readiness. So introduce yourself, or tell me about yourself, or go with your resume. These kind of questions they first ask. Why self introduction is important, or self introduction plays an important role. I will create another video on that. So first you should know common questions asked during interview session. Sometimes they ask about your strengths and weaknesses. Sometimes they ask about your hobbies. Be careful when you mention your hobbies, because interviewer ask more and more questions about your hobbies. So try to understand typical questions during interview sessions. They may ask about your short term goal, they may ask about your long term goals. So after that, why we hire you, these kind of questions they may ask. So try to prepare for that questions. Then communication skill, the way you speak. Means communication skill means what? How you communicate with interviewees or interview panel. So that thing is important. The way you speak, you should have to speak in a formal way only. Then ability to express yourself means what? Sometimes interviewer asks questions which is related to your education, which is related to your family background, which is related to your economical conditions. At that time, you have to express that things in a proper way. They may ask about your domain knowledge. You have to express whatever your achievements, whatever your domain knowledge in a proper way. Then skill of documentation, how you arrange your file, that skill is also important. Whatever means you have to arrange your document file in a reverse chronological order. Means whatever you accomplished or whatever you done recently, you have to add in first page, like that. Skill of documentation is also important. How you draft your resume, that thing is also important. Resume writing, most of the students don't know how to write resume, which content is important in resume writing. So that thing is also important. Skill of documentation. Then command over language. If interview is going on English language, so you should have command on that English language. You should have to speak in a fluent way in English language. So try to command over that interview's language. Then attitude, your attitude is also important for interview process. Then ability to convince, this thing is also important. You have to convince your interviewees, those who are taking interview. So ability to convince is also important for interview. Then interpersonal skill. Interpersonal skill means what? Communication with other peoples. And intrapersonal communication means what? Communication with our own selves. So along with being able to communicate your own ideas well, you have to be receptive to other ideas and work continuously. Here, once you got a chance to work in a company, you have to work in a team. So your interpersonal skill is important. Along with being able to communicate your own ideas well, you have to be receptive to other ideas and constructively. Here you have to understand other person's point of view during professional life. So try to focus on your interpersonal skill. Most of the students or most of the candidates have good interpersonal skill, means, and they can get success in their professional life. So try to improve your interpersonal skill. Then when possible, reflect back during interview question. Interviewer ask questions, then at that time you have to reflect back on that question. Then be able to work through problems and get succeed. Be able to work through problems and get succeed. Here you have to overcome whatever challenges, whatever problems you have to face. Be able to work on that things. Suppose you are not good in presentation skill, try to overcome that problem, try to improve your presentation skill and get succeed. Then multitasking skill. Multitasking skill means what? When discussing a previous positions held, include situations where you worked on multiple tasks at the same time. Here multitasking skill is important. Nowadays most of the organizations wants multitasker candidate. Why? Because day by day technology is developing. So they need the candidates who is able to work in a different task. So that thing is also important. Prepare a list of projects that required you to separate tasks into cluster that could be addressed simultaneously. Means you have to understand you have to prepare a list of projects that required you to separate tasks into cluster that could be addressed simultaneously. Then show a willingness to take on many responsibilities. During interview session you have to show your willingness to take on many responsibilities at the same time. So try to focus on that point also. Then key interview skills. active listening. This is important, very very important thing. You have to show your active listening skills with the help of your body language. You have to maintain eye contact with your interview panel. Then you have to maintain, or you have to nod your heads positively during interview session. Then you have to show your posture gestures properly. It shows your active listening skill. So that thing you have to follow during interview session. Control the content, not the interview. Whatever interviewer ask question, interviews ask questions, try to control on that content, not the interview. Then let others speaks for you, because during interview session let other people speaks for you. Don't monopolize your conversation during interview session. Then research knowledge. I already mentioned that your domain knowledge plays important role in interview section. So try to find out recent trends in your domain. Try to find out research research oriented knowledge in your domain. Then creativity and resourcefulness. Here during interview session you have to show your creativity or resourcefulness. Try to provide maximum information about your domain. Whatever they ask, you have to provide that information. Show creativity in document, or show creativity in your domain knowledge. Then be careful about following things. Arrive at least 15 minutes before your scheduled interview. Try to reach at the location before 15 minutes your scheduled interview. So that thing is also important. Try to reach at least 15 minutes before your scheduled interview. Then you will get some stability, or you will get some confidence. Otherwise, if you reach there at a time, so you can forgot how to answer the questions, or you face some stress problems. So try to arrive at least 15 minutes. Then carry all the related materials like extra copy of resume. I already mentioned that try to bring or try to carry extra copy of resume, your educational credentials or educational details. Try to carry extra copy. Then dress appropriately formally. We already discussed that point. Dress appropriately or formally during or for interview. Remember that the interview is two-way process. This is two-way communication is important during interview session. Interview panel may ask questions and you have to provide answers about that question. Then use the opportunity to illustrate the skills you possess. Here you have to demonstrate your skills during interview process. Use the appropriate posture, appropriate gesture. Then use the opportunity to illustrate the skills you possess. Then introspect your personality with your body language, with your appearance. Introspect your personalities. Then find out as much information as you can about the organization. This is important thing. If you want to work in a multinational company, then find out information about that organization, about that company with the help of internet. Try to find out or try to find out that company on different social media platform. Nowadays each and every organization has their own Facebook page, so try to follow that pages. Then you will get different idea about that organization. Different events happen in that organization, you will get information about that. Then anticipate questions that may ask and prepare answers for this. Anticipate questions means try to understand general or common questions about interview or during interview session, and prepare answers for these. Be confident and not too aggressive or passive during interview session. Here be confident. We have to show our confident with full of non-verbal causes. Our facial expressions, posture, gestures shows everything. If you sit or if you sit leaning towards or backward, it shows your it shows unprofessional. Then sit comfortably and don't fidget. Don't play with pen, don't play with hairs, don't play with your fingers during interview session. Sit comfortably, don't lean forward or backward. Sit comfortably. Then look the interviewers in the eyes, smile, sit up straight, and avoid speech utterances like such or like that. Look the interviewer in the eye, smile. Your cheerful smile is also important. Sit up straight and avoid speech utterances during interview session. If you can't understand interview's question, ask, repeat once again. But you have to ask politely. Sorry, sir, I can't understand your whatever thoughts. So like that, you have to ask. Then be courteous and respectful. Be polite, be courteous and respectful during interview session. Then be honest. Think for a moment before you say anything. Be honest and think for a moment before you say anything during interview session. Then body language. I already mentioned that body language plays an important role in any kind of interactive oral process or any kind of presentation skill. The moment you enter the interview venue, your body language clearly depict your mental attitude, your confidence, your different kinds of attitudes. Then eye contact. Maintaining eye contact is very important in interview session. You have to maintain eye contact with your interview panel. Then way of entering and leaving interviewer cabin. How to enter in interviewer's cabin. This is also important. Way of entering and leaving interviewer cabin. So you have to follow that things. First you have to ask, may I come in, sir, or can I sit? Like that you have to ask questions uh, politely. Then posture, your posture gestures, already we discuss everything about that. Your posture gestures are important during interview session. Then questions to be asked in an interview to interviewer. So this is your turn. Listed some of the more appropriate and necessary questions you can ask. You have to ask some questions to interviewer. So how will my performance be measured and mentioned and assessed? You have to ask questions like, how will my performance be measured or monitored and assessed during my working period? Then what are my daily responsibilities? You have to ask these questions, then you will get idea about your daily responsibilities in that organization. Then what are the required skills and personal attributes needed for this position? You can ask, what are the required skills or personal attributes needs for this position? Means required skills. Why? Because if you don't have that skill, then you have to update yourself, or then you have to acquire that skills, then you will get higher position. Or personal attributes also important. Then what are the policies of your company regarding ongoing training for this position or for advancement of that candidate? Then what are the policies of your, nowadays most of the organizations conduct training online, ongoing training sessions for their employers. So you have to ask that thing also, what are the policies of your company regarding ongoing training sessions? Then what sort of work can the first year of employment in this position provide for me? What sort of work can the first year of employment in this position provide for me? Means as a fresher, you don't have idea about that organization, then you can ask this question, what sort of work can the first year of employment in this position provide for me? Then how often will my performance be reviewed? Means how often will my performance be reviewed, how you assess my performance during this timeline. So this is all about interview. I will create one another session or one another lecture about interview. do's and don'ts of interview, why self introduction is important, why strengths and weaknesses we have to mention in interviews, then about hobbies, then about short term goal and long term goal, how they ask questions about short term goal and long term goal, where you see yourself after 5 years, after 10 years. These kind of questions they may ask during interview session. So I will create one another lecture video about this. If you have if you have any question about this interview session, I already mentioned my contact number in first slide. So try to communicate with me that through that contact number. You can communicate with me through that contact number anytime. So recently I joined this institute, so I don't know uh, who you are. I don't know your names. I don't know your roll numbers. So try to communicate with me with the help of that contact number. If you face any difficulties to understand any content of this interviews or of this session, try to communicate with me. Okay. Thank you everyone. Thanks a lot.